Hello, and welcome to Capital Compass. We are the official podcast of the New York State Catholic Conference. I'm your host, Gillian. Today, in episode 41, I'll be talking with Holly Grant from the Coalition to Protect Kids about New York's proposed Equal Rights Amendment that will be on the ballot in November. Election Day is quickly approaching, with early voting in New York starting on October 26th. During this time, we'd like to remind our listeners of the importance of being faithful citizens and exercising your sacred right to vote. Pope Francis has reminded us to participate in the public square for the common good. Every Catholic is called to do the work of properly informing their conscience and voting for candidates and policies that best advance the natural law, the protection of human rights, the dignity of the human person, the sacredness of all life, and the teachings of Christ and His Church. This is a big year with the presidential election. However, in New York, like several other states, there's also a critical referendum on the ballot. Proposal 1, sometimes referred to as the Equal Rights Amendment, aims to amend the New York State Constitution in a way that disregards the lives of the unborn and struggling children in the name of political agendas. We urge our listeners to vote no on this proposed amendment. In our following interview, I chat with Holly Grant from the Coalition to Protect Kids about the dangers of Prop 1. Joining me in this episode is Holly Grant. She is a devoted Catholic wife and mother of 4 in central New York who has dedicated nearly 20 years to teaching in academia. Holly is actively involved in her parish and volunteers as a faith formation teacher. Through her work with Catholic Charities, she has supported refugees, including organizing a diaper drive and baby shower for pregnant refugee mothers during the pandemic. For the past year, Holly has worked with the Coalition to Protect Kids, educating New Yorkers about Proposal 1 on this election cycle's ballot. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gillian. It's so nice to be here. I'm thrilled to speak with you.
Now, to kind of start, we've been hearing a lot about Proposal 1, also known as the so-called Equal Rights Amendment. So I kind of want to start with the facts. What is Prop 1?
So Proposal 1 is a amendment to our Constitution that we are going to be voting on in November or October 26th if you do early voting. And the language around it will appear from the New York State Board of Elections, specifically called the Amendment to Protect Against Unequal Treatment. That is what Proposal 1 is.
Before we dive into this and discuss more of why we oppose this amendment, you have been working with the Coalition to Protect Kids. Can you tell our listeners what the coalition is?
Sure. So the Coalition to Protect Kids is a line of defense against this proposal, against Proposal 1. And we are a coalition that is dedicated to protecting parents' rights and the well-being of our children from government overreach. We are aligned with the Catholic Church teachings that emphasize the family as the cornerstone of society.
So, the Coalition to Protect Kids has dubbed this amendment the Parent Replacement Act. Can you elaborate on why that is? Why should parents be specifically concerned about this with regard to their kids?
Sure. So, the coalition is calling Proposal 1 the Parent Replacement Act accurately because we worry that its vague language will be used to justify state interference in our family life. And the amendment could open the door for policies that would override parental rights and sideline parents in favor of state defined standards that conflict with our values and beliefs.
This isn't anything new with the vague language, and I kind of want to emphasize that in terms of legislation, but the difference is this would be an amendment to the state constitution.
Correct. And we should not take that lightly at all. Changing the Constitution is a big deal. And one of the controversies around the constitutional amendment in addition to its vague language, is that it has been rushed through our, lawful process of getting a resolution on the ballot for people to vote on without proper public discussion. We know that laws are meant to reflect the natural law and moral order and to promote justice and the common good. The broad language of this bill is extremely confusing. It does not tell people how to be good citizens, right? It doesn't explicitly say, or it doesn't provide clear guidelines on, our rights and responsibilities, and that is something obviously that we object to.
If passed, it would change the New York Constitution. How hard would it be to change if, say, we passed it and then they wanted to get rid of it?
Well, because it's a constitutional amendment, I mean, we've had constitutional amendment for the rights in New York here since 1938. So very difficult to change the Constitution.
Yeah, I just kind of want to hit that home to our listeners about not everybody knows the full process of everything going through, but this is more of a permanent type decision.
Right. Things like this become nearly impossible to pass, nearly impossible to override or to undo in the long term.
Yeah, it's
hmm
not like a bill that they pass that they can make amendments and change it.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly right. It is on the Constitution. Yeah, it is. So it is there for a long time.
With all of this being said, I do have to ask, don't we already have existing laws in New York State protecting people from discrimination? How how much is this proposed amendment really going to differ from what is current law in New York?
We do have discrimination laws in New York already that protect against certain discriminations, right? But we're adding to that one specific example, that's coming to mind is that we would no longer discriminate against age. And having age restrictions in place for vulnerable youth is an important thing, or our vulnerable senior citizens, by saying that we are going to undo these safeguards, right? When you add age to the list of things that you're not allowed to discriminate, we undo all of the common sense safeguards that we have in place for, children and our senior citizens. And so things like, age restrictions on sexual freedom or, a right to die would likely be challenged with this in the Constitution. And so, I mean, we already have countries that permit children as young as 12 years old to commit to assisted suicide and euthanasia. I mean, this could be legalized in New York. And so we need to make sure that we have appropriate protections in place for, very vulnerable populations in New York.
Yeah, this is just another assault on people essentially.
Yeah, yeah, it gets rid of their human dignity and our belief specifically in the Catholic Church about, the awe and beauty and wonder of life.
We're talking about our concerns for children and the fact that the government basically wants to say we're in charge and whether the parent is with a child every day, it's they should know best. I know not all the time, there are a lot of occasions where unfortunately the parents are not involved, but generally speaking, how do people think that the government controlling our kids is the best option compared to us parenting our own children?
That's a hard question, Gillian, because um actually it's not a hard question. It's an easy answer. The answer is it's not. It's not a good idea for the state or government to be controlling our kids or our family. And, if the question is, should the state be in control of our children? The obvious answer is no. I mean, and everybody knows that. And so that's why this coalition exists is, you know, people get busy with their lives. They they forget to read things. They don't know. And maybe they need to hear it again and again and again. No. The government should not be interfering with our decisions as parents over the consensual, procedures that are medical or non-medical, surgical, non-surgical, that are done with our children. And so the obvious answer is no. Like I said, that's why the coalition exists, to remind people, no, this is an instance where the government is trying to override your right as a parent, and we have to vote no. We have to be against this proposal.
Now, you mentioned medical procedures. I know the coalition has voiced their opinion on what could happen when, quote unquote, Pandora's box could be opened if this was passed. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm happy to. So, what listeners may not know, in New York, children can already get a lot of host of medical procedures, including abortion and birth control pills. So, medical, non medical procedures without their parents knowing. And the New York Civil Liberties Union proudly displays this information on their website. One thing that children can't get without parental consent is cross-sex hormones and transgender surgeries. And so if Proposal 1 passes, those things become immediately available. I do want to bring up one other medical procedure, at the end of life and end of life care and physician assisted suicide out the window, right? Like children would be able to consent to that.
You know, I'm sure our listeners have gotten our emails. We've been fighting against the legalization of assisted suicide in New York since, I believe, 2015. And the fact is, we are looking at other countries who have assisted suicide legal for years, and you're seeing people who are depressed or might have, an intellectual or physical disability that want to commit assisted suicide. This is just another assault on the dignity of human life and vulnerable peoples in New York State, where abortion is basically legal to the birth of the child. So there's a potential that, if Proposal 1 and assisted suicide were passed in New York, children could ask to commit suicide. Am I correct in this possibility?
You got it, Gillian. And that is the sad state of affairs. And these are the conversations, right? The many combinations of things that could happen need to be discussed thoroughly. Thoroughly. All hypothetical situations need to be explored before you put something in the Constitution for all people in the state of New York. And that's the state constitution, right? I mean, we're not even talking the US Constitution. So on all fronts, it's very serious. And I do want to say that the bishops of New York and Cardinal Dolan coming out with a statement on how to vote no on Proposal 1 is really significant because, right, not only does it remind us of our Catholic social teaching and the Catholic teachings, right? But the church has a very strong tradition in having the faithful just vote their conscience, right? Have you thought about all the consequences? Have you gone through and really thought about things, right? Even when you go to confession, you do an examination of conscience. So when we go to vote at the ballot box, we are free to choose our vote our conscience. And we are called to do that, right? Politically and to engage in politics. But, the bishops and Cardinal Dolan are coming out and saying, no, do not vote for this. So it is a huge deal. And, they've helped the faithful, in guiding them to the right choice here, as they always do, in how to be a good Catholic and how to be a good citizen. And so it is serious. And your listeners should know that.
Yeah, I really want to touch on 2 points there. We are talking about some hypotheticals, and hopefully, it does not come to that. But the fact is, we're taking real life examples from other countries, from other places. So I want listeners to know we're not coming out of left field here. You know
No, no, it's already happening in the United States and other states.
exactly.
Yeah, California, Montana, it's already happening.
And the other thing is being part of the New York State Catholic Conference and explaining faithful citizenship to people, obviously it is our choice to form our conscience, but this proposal is nonpartisan. It's not, we're not looking at either side of the political lines. We're looking at the dignity of human people and how this is going to affect people, and we need to remember that.
I couldn't agree more, Gillian. And that is why our particular coalition is so diverse. It is made up of a broad spectrum of people from all kinds of organizations and private citizens who are all over the place on their political leanings, party politics, if you want to go that route. But it is really broad, and it really is for everybody. And like you said, it doesn't matter what side of the political line you're on. The right thing to do is to vote no on this. Gillian, I'm going to ask you to link the exact wording from the New York elections on the proposal, because what we're going to see on the ballot is a abstract of what we're going to be voting on. And so it appears it's going to be called the Amendment to Protect Against Unequal Treatment, from the New York State Board of Elections. It has, multiple names, but that is the, here at the coalition, we're calling it the Parent Replacement Act. But the summary sounds good. When you read the abstract, of course, it's like the danger hiding in plain sight, right? Like a wolf in sheep's clothing here. It's important that people have that access through your website, but also on their own, to visit the New York State Board of Elections to read not only the abstract, but the actual language of the bill, specifically Part B, which is so utterly confusing. And that's really the part that, gets to our freedoms in the United States and, starts to strip away at our freedom of religion and, how we speak about things.
You made me think of these cases we've heard about in the news, specifically some in Canada, how there have been parents who have fought over their child's gender identity. One might believe they are the sex assigned at birth, while the other believes that they are the opposite gender. This has led to a lot of legal battles. Essentially, if Proposal 1 were passed, could this happen in New York? I know this is a lot of hypothetical talk, but it's hypothetical talk based on real life things happening around the world.
Yeah, I want to say, Jillian, it's happening, right? The legal confusion over these kinds of things is already happening. We're seeing it play out. And so, it's to rush the voters to say yes to this proposal when we don't know any of the outcomes of what is going on with any of these cases that are already happening. That's a huge risk for parents, for children, for our vulnerable population. Do we want to take that risk? And no, we don't. The answer is no, right? We don't want to take that risk. These are human beings. And so the answer is no, we don't want to do any of that.
So essentially, we could be wasting our time and manpower taking kids away from their parents because of the healthcare decisions they make, rather than hypothetically a child who comes from a tough home that maybe should they actually should be focusing on that rather than.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We have great laws about, children, and already protecting children against abuse and neglect. And those are certainly punishable, by law.
Now, kind of where this conversation is going, I want to go back and dig a little deeper into the language of Proposal 1. I've linked the language of the proposed amendment in our show notes, just so listeners can go and read it themselves. But looking at the abstract and everything, does it say that there are does it say that there are already protections for certain classes?
The first sentence of Section 111A, the first sentence: no person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of the state or any subdivision thereof. Done. It is already the law of the land.
Proponents of the amendment want to add things like gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy to be protected from discrimination. But do they even have any definitions of this? How could we see this play out legally?
Right, because in the legal circles, when this goes to court, and then it's up to a judge to interpret what all of these things mean. Like I said before, our laws are meant to help us be good citizens and to put protections in place that help us, show us what our rights and responsibilities are. But I don't know what these things mean, so I don't know how to be a good citizen.
Exactly.
And that's where the confusion comes in, and that's why, you wanna vote no on these things.
Exactly. And they try to hide it in the
Correct,
language.
correct.
Unfortunately, that's a big thing just in general in politics where they make the language so they can kind of twist it in their own way. But again, this is a constitutional amendment, it's different.
Right. And I mean, I'm not even coming to this as a legal scholar. I don't have a JD. I I would say I'm well read. I'm a concerned citizen, and I'm a concerned mother of 4. I what do any of these things mean for my children? I don't know. And so when that red flag goes up, like, whoa, what are we talking about? No, and that's how we stop this. That's how I come to this anyway, as a both a parishioner, a lay person in my Catholic church, and as a mother, as a wife, and as an engaged citizen in New York. Let's think more. Let's think New York. Think.
I love that because it's not like the Coalition to Protect Kids, the Catholic Church, we're not against equal rights. We're
Correct.
against the vague nature of this amendment that can have permanent consequences for everybody. And as you said, we need to think about this. We need better definitions. It's very vague. It's too vague that it can be interpreted on both sides of very good, very bad. And we need that, especially for a constitutional amendment. We need something more well defined.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And we need to stop this idea that children should be making, life altering decisions without parental consent. They can't give informed consent. Age restrictions make sense, right? They make sense. And we already have too much abortion in this state. Like, these are things that you hope people see and why they vote no.
We've been talking a lot about Proposal 1, but I want to let our listeners know that many people still don't know about it. When the bishops sent out their statement, we got a lot of responses about this being the first time they have heard about the proposed amendment. So, to our listeners, I urge you to help inform others. In the show notes, we've added the link to the bishop statement. We have PDF copies of it in both English and Spanish available on our website so that you can share it with others. I was actually talking to people in my parish recently, and they didn't know about this. Prop 1 is something that needs to be discussed more and more, especially as we get closer to Election Day.
That's exactly right, Gillian. And the listeners should talk to people in their parish, right? How does the word get out there? Through more discussion. So listeners should definitely be talking to other people in their congregation, other people in their parish, people they volunteer with. And I think people don't know a lot about it, says a lot too, because when they read that abstract, right, they're going to say, oh, well, this is great. Of course, we need more protections. But everything is being, you know, not everything has a light shined on it. And the Coalition to Protect Kids and the Cardinal Dolan has now shined a light on what is going on behind the vagaries in the words, the definitions, and all of these things that we really need to know in order to be informed citizens and make good choices at the ballot box.
We have our resources through the Catholic Church, but how can people find out more and get involved with the Coalition to Protect Kids?
Of course, we have a website. It's protectkidsny.com. And you can sign up for emails. You can sign up to be on a committee. There are free access to educational resources, explaining this and what it says. I mean, there's lots of things at that website that you can use to help educate yourselves and others about this ballot proposal.
Thanks for listening to the Capital Compass podcast, and thank you so much to Holly for coming on the show. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To catch all the latest from the conference, you can follow us on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, at NYS Catholic Conf, and on Facebook at NYS Catholic Conference. Thanks again, and God bless.